Welcome to Unit 4, Video 5, Part 2. So in the first part, we were talking about the Punic Wars. We talked about the First Punic War. We are currently talking about the Second Punic War and how Carthage, under the leadership of Hannibal, was very successful in making it to the Italian peninsula, in maintaining their rule for 10 years in the Italian peninsula, causing chaos. But then we got to Rome's counterattack. So Rome's counterattack. With Carthage's best general and largest army in Italy, Carthage itself was vulnerable to attack. The Roman general Scipio Africanus invaded Africa to draw Hannibal out of Italy. So basically, Scipio Africanus decided to go down to Carthage and start attacking there. Hannibal and his army would then be forced to follow back into Carthage, out of the Italian peninsula, no longer a threat to Rome, and then they are fighting somewhere that is not the city of Rome. So Scipio had studied Hannibal's tactics and was able to defeat him at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. So Hannibal started in Carthage in northern Africa, went through Spain, went through the Alps mountains, stayed in the Italian peninsula for 10 years fighting very successfully, but then Scipio Africanus came down here back to Africa towards Carthage, so Hannibal follows him, and right here at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, they are going to fight one another. Hannibal is going to lose. Hannibal and his Carthaginian soldiers are going to lose, even though they have home field advantage. After the battle at Zama, Carthage was forced to sign another unfair treaty, give up more land, and agree not to go to war without Rome's permission. So Carthage loses this war, the second of the Punic Wars, and now they have to give up land. They have to agree that they will not go to war with anyone without Rome giving them permission first. So basically, it's like Rome is ruling over them without having to deal with all the specifics. Hannibal is later exiled by Carthage, and he does end up taking his own life in 181 BC rather than die by an enemy's hand. There were a lot of people who were after him and wanted to capture him, wanted to get information from him, wanted to kill him. And so he ended up taking his own life rather than succumbing to any of those fates. We do have a third Punic War between Carthage and Rome, and this occurred between 149 and 146 BC, so it only lasts a couple of years. Carthage disobeyed their treaty and attacked their neighbor, Numidia, without Roman permission. So Carthage didn't even attack Rome, they just attacked someone else near Carthage and didn't ask Rome for permission first. So this gave Rome an excuse to attack Carthage. Carthage was besieged and the city destroyed. So Rome is no longer just going to control Carthage. Rome is going to destroy Carthage to the point where they don't want anyone to be able to survive there anymore. The Romans scattered salt on the Carthaginian fields, so no crops could grow there. So they couldn't even rebuild their city if they wanted to. They wanted to prevent Carthage from rebuilding. So it was a devastating attack. So in the end, Rome won all three of the Punic Wars against Carthage. Victory in the Punic Wars gave Rome control of the Mediterranean, starting first with the islands of Sicily and Sardinia, and then the area they take over that once did belong to Carthage. And Rome expands its power and military. So in the map shown here, the green is what the Roman Republic was, and the orange color is going to be what is added after the Punic Wars. Impacts of the Punic Wars. There are several. There are two major impacts, however, that we will focus on. One, it established Rome as the strongest power in Europe. Two, it pointed out the weaknesses of using citizen soldiers to build an empire. So the Punic Wars is great for Rome because now they're seen as all-powerful. but it is also helping them grow because they understand the importance of having a standing army rather than using the citizen soldiers when you're building something as large as Rome was becoming. In 104 BC, the Roman general Marius made several reforms which led to the first large professional army in the world, meaning trained soldiers whose job it was to fight, who were trained, who knew how to listen to orders, how to fight, how to use strategy, and that was their job, was to be a soldier. It's the first large professional standing army in the world. The old Roman army, prior to this reform, soldiers had to be citizens. They had to provide their own equipment, so they didn't have all the same helmets or shields or swords. Leaders were elected, so even if they didn't know what they were doing, if people thought they did, that was enough. Training was very limited, and they were only called up in times of war. With these new reforms, it organized the troops into units of 80 men and appointed officers based on ability as opposed to family status. So now the officers, the ones who are in charge of these men, are going to have to prove that they know what they're doing. It set up rigorous training programs, which means intense, where they would have to train day after day. Made large amounts of standardized equipment so that now all Roman soldiers would have the same shields, the same swords or weaponry, the same shoes, the same armor, the same helmets, the same everything. Each soldier also now had to carry their own equipment. So previously they would use wagons to carry all the equipment. It would slow them down by quite a bit. So this allowed the army to move faster than by using wagons. Plus, depending on the terrain, if it was mountainous, if there were rivers, it would make it a lot more difficult to pull the wagons across that. So this makes it simpler. And they rewarded veteran soldiers with land in conquered provinces. So those who fought in war were allowed to take land when land was taken over during wartime. So what would happen previously is people would go to fight, they would be gone for years fighting in wars, they would come home to nothing. Perhaps their family had died or moved, or their wife had remarried, not knowing if they would ever return, or they had lost their job, and so they didn't have anything to come home to. So this gave them a reason to fight because now they were going to be rewarded with land. This modernized army became an unstoppable force in the Mediterranean. The Roman Republic turned Roman Empire was going to be very, very powerful. And eventually the Roman Empire conquered all of the land surrounding the Mediterranean. So on the map shown here, the white is water, the green is Rome, and the gray is the rest of the land. So you see they've conquered modern Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Egypt, Turkey, Northern Africa, and more. So they were a very, very large republic turned empire. And that actually is one of the reasons for their downfall, is how large they became. But we'll get to that as we move forward.